She was pulled through the ground like an animal, face dragging against the arid, rocky wash just outside Skull Valley, Arizona. Blood caught in her hair, one eye closed off with swelling, skin peeled raw from the desert floor. A rope was bound high around her ankle, bound enough to bruise, bound enough to snap. And the man on horseback, he never looked back. He rode steady, as if he was drawing dead weight, like she was only cargo. Badness like that doesn't go away. You can't forget it. Not if there is even a spark of soul left in you. Caleb Hart witnessed it. He had been riding the ridge that day, just another day under the harsh Arizona sun, repairing fences, inspecting water lines, busy with things that hadn't meant a damn thing for years. But that instant, one instant tore through the sand like lightning. He witnessed her body twitch and lag behind the horse, her screams muted in sand and silence, and something deep within him split apart. He wasn't a hero. Not anymore. That piece of him died when he killed his wife. Killed half of himself right along with her. He hadn't arrived to save anyone. But some things you don't ride by. Some things require your response. So Caleb did what a man should do. Raised his rifle, took one breath, and fired. The man dumped his saddle like a bag of bones. And the girl, she folded like a puppet with severed strings, face down in the dirt. Caleb leaped from horseback, boots striking ground like thunder. He ran harder than he had in years. Her face was ravaged to hell, lips split, skin raw, dirt stuck to dried blood. But her eyes locked with his. And they weren't afraid anymore. Just exhausted. "You came," she whispered. He nodded. That was all that he could offer. He did not say much on the way back. Did not need to. She was leaning against him on the saddle, more or less clinging, one arm dangling, head buried in his chest as if it were the only thing that was still real in her life. Each jolt sent a shiver through her. She did not talk, did not weep, but occasionally, she'd bunch a handful of his coat in her fist, just to verify he was still there. By the time they arrived at the cabin, the sun was below the hills. The porch creaked under his boots. The cabin smelled like firewood and dust and exhausted horses. It was home, sort of. He didn't ask whether she could stand. He simply lifted her off the saddle, as softly as he could, and bore her in. Placed her beside the hearth. Got a bowl of water, the cleanest towel he had. Her eye was almost closed due to swelling. Lips split open wide. Dry blood congealed thick in the folds of her skin. Still, there was something about her. Not beauty in the gentle Sunday type of way. No, this was the sort that issues from crawling through hell and coming out alive to tell the tale. She parted her mouth to talk, but nothing emerged. So Caleb remained silent too. Simply wetted the towel and started to wipe her face. Slow, cautious, as if attempting to repair a broken shard of glass. She managed to find a voice eventually, but it was harsh. Rust and gravel. Told him the man he'd shot was an employee of her uncle. Said she'd attempted to escape. Said they were going to sell her. Like she was cattle. Caleb didn't request further. He'd heard enough. Some people don't require an explanation of why they're in hell. They only require someone to be willing to walk them back out. He slept on the floor that night and gave her the bed. He didn't get much rest. He just lay there listening to the wind, to the old house settling, to the slow, broken cadence of her breathing. And in the morning she was up. Still sore, still creaky, but standing at his counter brewing coffee. And for the first time in years, Caleb didn't feel quite so alone. Mara, she told him her name later, said little that week. But she glided around the cabin as if she'd been there forever. Cleaned the floor. Groomed his horse as if it were her own. Walked limply down to the creek and fetched water with obstinate pride. Caleb asked no questions. He simply observed silent distance, like observing a fire determine whether it would burn everything to the ground, or finally perish. Her bruises faded, imperceptibly, purple to yellow to skin once more. But it wasn't the color of her wounds that gave away the story. It was the way she stood, always a little tight, as if waiting for a hand to pull her back by the hair. And then, on the fourth morning, when he was splitting wood out in the back, she came out. Voice soft, steady. I don't want to run no more. Caleb put down the axe and mopped his forehead. You sure? He asked. Mara nodded. I don't have anyone else. And I'm sick of leaving parts of myself behind wherever I go. He said little, just stared at her, hard and long, then a soft-spoken response. Then I guess we'd better get started on building something to stay for. But peace doesn't last long out here. Not when the past rides faster than the future. 2 days afterward, a rider appeared on the South Trail. Did not knock. Did not speak. Simply sat half-concealed in the trees like a buzzard waiting on something to die. Caleb was familiar with the expression. Trouble wearing a saddle. He emerged slow, his rifle against the doorframe. The man doffed his hat. His face was creased and cracked like dry leather. Saw a girl matching a certain description, he said. Word is she's gone missing. Family's worried. Caleb didn't blink. Ain't nothing missing here. The man spat in the dust. We'll see about that. Then turned and rode off. Didn't mean it was over. Hell, it meant the storm had just begun. Within, Mara stood by the fireplace, the hand on her hip beside the old rifle leaning against the corner. She didn't utter a word, merely regarded Caleb like she already knew what was pending. This ain't over. They turned together and rode away, hoofs thundering, leaving behind only a trail of dust. But they'd return. Of course they would. Mara said nothing. She just stood there with the heaviness of it all in her chest and the heat of the sun on her back. Caleb glared at her and they both knew. Next time there would not be a talk. They arrived at dawn. 5 men this time. Not slow. Not careful. Just wrath on horseback. Thundering down the hill like they intended to tear the world asunder. But Caleb was prepared. Rifle in his hands. Eyes calm. Not fearless, but resolute. And Mara? She stood again in the barn's shadow, that same rifle slung tight. That same fire burning behind her bruised eye. But something in her had changed. She wasn't hiding anymore. Wasn't hoping someone else would step up. She was done being taken. The first shot cracked like thunder in the morning stillness. Then the world erupted. Caleb pulled one through the sleeve. Mara hit the ground, rolled, returned fire. Dust rose, bullets wailed. But it didn't take long. Because this is the thing about men like him. They can intimidate, but they are not made for people who stand. When it was finished, there was silence. Caleb's shirt was ruined. Mara's hands were shaking, but they were still standing together. Later, when the sun had sunk low, he hammered shut the front gate while she cooked beans at the fire. Her arms aching, her palms blistered. But she smiled. See, life doesn't give you peace always. Sometimes you make it, with battered hands, with sweat and grit, nail by nail. And maybe that's what strength actually looks like, not muscle, not guns, but getting up anyway, even when you're afraid. Ever been like life pulled you through the muck and challenged you to utter a simple thank you? Ever stood in front of the mirror and asked yourself how in the world you were still standing? Then perhaps this narrative is yours as well. So I have to ask, do we remain small because it's comfortable? Or do we finally stand because we're weary of running? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read each one. And if this video resonated with you, even a little, click that like button. It brings more people to this channel. And if you're the type of person who still thinks grit, hope, and second chances are possible, keep going. Subscribe. Hang around. Because out here in the American West, people might get knocked down. But we sure as hell don't stay down. We stand.